information. I don't know that we have a policy in Belgrade where folks who have these types of permits have to qualify what they have on premises. And I don't know that that's the best policy. It seems kind of like turning a blind eye. And maybe we need to look at this ordinance next, actually, would probably be my recommendation overall, like the bigger one, would be that maybe we need to review these and start putting into place how we can catalog changes. I would, I think, ask if, you know, Gary's note says that he went out, but it doesn't say when, it doesn't say a time, it doesn't give us a whole lot of information, and maybe something a little bit more detailed. And if there are changes from last year, I would think that our code enforcement officer would have notated them somewhere. And then we check back in with Gary, and if not, then perhaps he goes back out and does a site visit and just make sure that everything is comparable.
Okay, so I just need clarification here. So can we go ahead and approve Francis's?
Francis's, there seems to be no concerns on.
Well, then let's go ahead and approve that and then decide how we're going to deal with Raymond.
So what we have to do, Kathy, is we'll have to exit the public hearing, and then we'll have to announce in these select board meeting what our decision was from the public hearing. So I think I would probably make a motion to table Raymond Frappier's until we can just get a little bit more clarification.
Fine.
If that makes sense, though, you know, doesn't mean the rest of the board has to follow, but I feel like if there's concerns, and if you're a property owner that abuts a graveyard, you have a right to have your concerns answered.
Sure.
All right.
I don't debate that. I just think we ought to move it along here.
Yeah. Is there any more discussion on Raymond Frappier's auto and junkyard graveyard application? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Look at everybody flying on this one. All right, all those in favor? All right, 5-4-0 against. Welcome, Dan. All right, I will take a motion to open these. Actually, I'm going to take a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-4-0 against. All right, I'll take a motion to open the select board meeting.
So be it.
Is there a second? All right, all those in favor? All right, 5-4-0 against. The select board meeting is now open. All right, I will make a motion that Francis Frappier's auto graveyard application located at map 10 lot 22D be approved for the year 2020, 2021.
Second that.
Second that.
All
Well,
right,
that's what you wanted to say?
what's that?
Are you sure that's the one you wanted to say? Didn't you say Raymond?
No, I said Francis.
Okay, sorry. I'm hearing things.
I could have tripped. Who knows? All right. Is there any further discussion on that particular application? All right, seeing none. All those in favor? 5-4-0 against. All right, I would like to make a motion that we table Raymond Frappier's auto graveyard application until Gary Fuller, our code enforcement officer, has a chance to physically inspect the property, report back to the select board with a date and time of the inspection of the property and noting any changes or alterations since his inspection of last year. I'll table that till the next meeting of December 1st, 2020. Is there a second on the tabling?
I'll second.
All right, is there any further discussion on that?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing none? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. All those against? 2 against. The motion carries. All right, next up on the meeting is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who has something that they would like the select board to address that will not be taken up on one of our other agenda items this evening? Anthony, would this be the part where Gary would speak? Because his concern I don't see on the actual agenda. Oh, you are still muted, Anthony.
Pardon me. That item is item C under the new business portion of the agenda.
Oh, okay. I thought we were doing maybe something else with that. Okay, cool. All right. So I don't see that anyone else has anything, so I'll move right along to old business. And first up, we have the approval of the November 10, 2020 Select Board meeting minutes.
And I need to, and I have,
I'll take a motion to open that agenda item.
Make that motion.
Yes, I moved that.
All right. And is there a second?
Second, I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 0 against. That is now open for discussion.
so I need to add one name to the people who were attending the meeting, and that is Penny Morrell.
All right, did anyone have any other questions or concerns about the meeting minutes from the November 10 meeting?
No.
All right, seeing none. Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ricky, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
And 5, 4, 0 against. Thank you. All right, I'm going to make a motion that we table the board appointment of Aaron Pileski to the December 1st meeting. Aaron is working and is unable to join us. I'm super mean and make people come in for this one.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for tabling, 0 against. All right, next up on the agenda is new business. We have the discussion and the consideration of the Salt Well Contamination Group's recommendations. We have our fabulous Dwight here from DOT who's going to work us through whatever questions we may have. I will take a motion to open that agenda item.
Make that motion.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor? All right. Anthony, do you want to give the summation or would you like me to?
I'll be happy to give a brief summation. So as you folks know, we were hopeful that we might be able to drill a shallow gravel well on Craig Pooler's property that would not only perhaps serve his home, but one of the neighboring properties. As it turns out, Mr. Pooler's well is only 90 feet deep, so a shallow well was not really a viable option. Further down the hill, there are both shallow and ledge wells. All have been contaminated, and so we've just sort of reached the conclusion that drilling more wells is not the solution to our answer. Purchasing properties is fraught with all sorts of difficulties. Most notably, if someone doesn't want to sell their property, then they have that right, and we're still stuck with a contaminated well that we've got to remediate in some sort of way. And so, given all that, I think the foursome that the select board appointed to serve as the research committee on this has reached the conclusion that the only real viable option left on the table is the one that was least preferred. But again, it is the only viable option. And that is that we build a public water system. What the DOT has offered is to craft an agreement under which the state would build that system at a cost of approximately $2 million, and then the town would operate it. Of course, there are a lot of details that would still need to be negotiated after that. So your committee representatives are here. Dwight Dowdy, who is the main DOT hydrogeologist, is here. And so if I missed any of the high points there, you guys jump in.
Well, I think one of our other concerns was that my God, we literally looked at every option. And if you purchased someone's property, say we purchased their property for fair market value and it's $100,000, but they owe $40,000 on their property. So now they have $60,000 to put towards a new property. Do we, in good conscience, uproot folks from their homes where a number of them have lived there pretty close to the majority of their lives, and expect for them to be able to establish a new location in Belgrade for what they're being offered? And we felt that that's probably not going to happen. So that was a big concern for me, was whether or not we could offer folks the ability to stay in Belgrade while also remediating their well contamination issues. So we thought maybe we could drill a well or several wells and tee off from them if we could find potable water and take those to other locations. Didn't pan out like we were hoping, did it, Dwight? And Dwight's over here going, I think I told you so, Melanie. So it looks like the best solution is going to be to build a public water supply, tee off from the amount of contaminated wells at this point, and see what we could set for parameters. And if we can, because this one particular water supply would only be able to service so many households. So what do we do past that point?
How many households will it take care of?
Dwight, is it 13 at this point, or would we build it for 15?
I think right now we're targeting about the 13, but it's certainly capable of adding a few additional. So we've had that buffer built in case any additional development or other wells in the area become impacted.
Dwight, as you guys craft this draft agreement, is it going to, it says that the town would operate it and details would have to be negotiated. Are all of those negotiated details going to be outlined in the draft agreement?
I will preface my comments by saying I'm a hydrogeologist, and I tend to leave the legal stuff to the legal office. But having said all of that, I know this is relatively new. This decision to move forward in this direction was made recently. So this is the first step here, is to have the select board in Belgrade review this to see if there is a commitment to move forward in a collaborative effort. So I know the legal office at Maine DOT is ready and willing to move something forward and work with you guys to get something developed.
That's an answer that's not really an answer.
It said a lot without saying anything. That was my intent.
Okay, are you sure you're not a politician?
No.
Okay.
Maybe
I was looking for an answer there, but I wasn't hearing it. So,
I know our legal office is involved now. So as I said, it's a recent decision. So we're going to move something forward. And those things, the devil's in the details. I'm sure it's going to take several meetings to sort of hammer this thing out. But the department wants to move forward. Maine DOT wants to resolve this issue in a timely manner. And
okay.
I'm sure the town does as well.
All right, Bruce?
So, are we ensured that the water source we're gonna use is not gonna get contaminated also?
There's nothing guaranteed. Maine DOT has internally had some discussions about shutting down their facility. Our idea is if that is a continuing source, let's eliminate the source. And that would enhance the overall protection of that wellhead area. Keep in mind, though, there is another salt storage area immediately adjacent to Maine DOT's. So although, we are moving out, there is still some concerns there with a continuing source.
Is there somebody here that wants to address what we have discussed as far as mitigating the source that's adjacent to DOT's? Otherwise known as Town of Belgrade Salt and Sand Storage Shed.
Right.
Jack?
You're muted.
You're still on mute, Jack.
Okay,
There you are.
my greatest concern is however we do this, whether we do it with a single wells or a common water system, is how we protect the town from spread of the liability to property that's currently not developed but may be contaminated. And I think that from what I've heard, and I don't know for sure, but from what I've heard, there is a substantial subdivision planned in an area that potentially is contaminated. Now, how do we protect the town from an extension of this liability that could run very far?
So I did speak today in preparation for this meeting with the Maine Rural Water Association, and they have some ideas about how we can set this system up so that it just serves the initial households that are to be served. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't be subject to future claims, and I think how we address those claims would definitely be a negotiation with DOT that would be worked into the agreement.
Ellen, if I can bring second.
Yes, yep.
Wait, I know you mentioned the other facility, which is the town of Belgrade. What are you suggesting we do there?
One of the things, and I will speak from internal experience with Maine DOT. I think we have 127 locations across the state of Maine. We certainly have some legacy issues with the management of our winter's ice and snow control ingredients. And what we have consistently seen, and I think we're seeing at many municipalities, is housekeeping issues. Housekeeping, it doesn't take a lot of salt to contaminate a large amount of groundwater. So a small amount, even a community bucket or an area where you allow the community access to it. I live in Winthrop and I see it firsthand where it's stored at a transfer area, transfer station, and it's spread all over the place. That sand is mixed with salt. It doesn't take, as I said, a lot of salt. Just to sort of put it in perspective, 1 teaspoon will contaminate 5 gallons of water. So it doesn't take a lot of salt to trigger above groundwater threshold.
I was hoping you were gonna put that out there, Dwight, because I was gonna
All
ask
right.
that.
Well, so it
You
doesn't
heard
take
that
a lot.
before.
Okay. But you know, I've known many of you have heard me get on my soapbox before. Housekeeping is critical. And wherever you have salt, you're going to have some spillage. And that's one of my concerns here, is that we have a very strong well. I think I've mentioned it in the past. We sort of threaded a needle or found a needle in a haystack up there with a couple of fractures that are producing a significantly high yield for bedrock aquifer. And there's no salt in it. And so, you know, my concern is that continued storage up there may lead to some impacts.
All right, my next question is there any plan to stop the salt priority that the state's doing around that triangle?
Look, Dwight, I have an ally.
To the best of my knowledge, no. One of the concerns that the department has is the abrupt changes in the maintenance of traffic or of roadways during the winter. So one of the objectives of the Maine DOT and working with many communities is to maintain consistency. And so we have a calibrated sequence of application for salt. It's speed control, ground controlled. We try to maximize the efficiency with the minimal amount of salt use. So I think there would be some challenges internally for DOT. Although I know we have worked with other communities where they've had some interest in doing some low salt use, where we've actually had roads transition to local control, where those stretches of roads are maintained by the local community and they can put and maintain the amount of salt.
My concern is we're gonna spend $2 million for a water source and we're still spreading salt right around the same area. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't even make sense. If you see what I'm saying, I'm gonna, as a taxpayer coming in and saying, why would we do that? Why would they be doing that? You know, you would think that would be one of the first things that would go away. And I think Belgrade ought to do away with their salt priority because I think we're gonna have other troubles other places.
Well, because that was in 2011, you know, that was the solution, was going to be, we had minimal wells impacted, you know, a handful in 2011. And after 2011, that triangle was transitioned to salt priority. And since 2011, we went from 4 or 5 wells to 13 wells. And I do understand that there's geological breakdown and, you know, I don't fully understand the geology of the area. Jack and Dwight are much better at that than I am. But I've never been under the assumption that those two somehow don't go hand in hand. And it would be similar to what we did. We invested a ton of money and, you know, a bond and did the sand and salt shed because this was going to alleviate the issue. And instead of alleviating the issue, what we've seen is that the issue has compounded exponentially in 9 years. Not even 9 years, because I think, Dwight, when we first started identifying 13, we were 3 years ago. So
I think keep in mind, you know, we've been dealing with some well claims in this area for almost 20 years. I hate to admit this, but I will put it out there. Maine DOT does not chase well claims, so we don't go knocking on neighbors' doors to see how far the spread is. And I think that's the way it unfolded here in Belgrade. We initially had we had 1 or 2, and then neighbors began talking, and we got a couple of others that came forth. And then we reached out to the community, began working collaboratively with you folks. And that's when we said, let's just see how big the problem is. And
Okay.
that's how we ended up here.
So maybe initially we hadn't done more of a widespread sort of well sampling.
One of the things about salt is it's an individual's palate becomes accustomed to it. If it's slowly increased over time, you know, they become accustomed to the taste. I've walked into households where the levels we're talking about in the Belgrade area are in the 600 range for parts per million. Probably any one of us walking in could probably taste that in the water. But the individuals that have been there have sort of grown accustomed to it. So it's really hasn't been something they've noticed. So it creeps up on folks. So a lot of people don't realize they have salt in their water until a real estate transaction, or in many cases, we do pre-construction sampling and we find this information.
Okay.
No, I still, I mean, something still isn't just right, because back in 2011, or before we built the sand and salt shed, they used to dump salt, right, loads of it over in just a gravel pit.
Mhm.
And then mix it. I mean, it sat there and, you know, got mixed in with the sand, never got covered or anything. And when we built the sand and salt shed, all that gets mixed inside the building, not outside anymore. So you'd think the salt ratio would be going down, not up. That's why I'm having a hard job accepting this, I guess.
I think the levels we see, and I'll try to address a couple of issues. If you look on Route 27 further down towards Augusta, we have analytical data from wells there that show chloride levels in the below the 50 range. I will say anecdotally statewide, we sample wells all over the place. And that's what we typically see for the baseline of wells that are proximal to the roadways. Your typical house is, you know, the well is in front, the house is kind of close to the road, and the septic system's in the back. That's your classic design. And we see those wells that are within 40 to 100 feet of the roadway showing some impacts, but nothing at the oh my gosh level.
Right.
We begin looking at the levels we're seeing in Belgrade. Those tend to suggest what we call legacy issues, where salt has been stored for a long period of time. You are right. We have seen, we do know that up to 2011 in Stevens Pits, you know, salt was stored in an open air environment. I will point out that unfortunately we dealt with many well claims in Pinkham's Cove associated with that. If you look at the location of both Maine DOT, Stevens Pits, and the current location of the Belgrade sand salt area, it's strategically positioned on top of a watershed divide. You couldn't pick a worse spot to put it. It's high in the watershed, and it straddles a groundwater divide.
So Dwight, now I'm over here as both a taxpayer and on the select board, and quite frankly, I'll try not to mince my words, but I'm PO'd. Because we had that engineered for the best possible place for us to construct that sand and salt shed. What did we need to do for essentially straining? What types of deciduous trees should we plant around there to act like a strainer from the sand and salt shed? So, so essentially now I'm being told that we had something engineered and it's not nowhere near in the best spot that we could have done that.
I can't, I'm speaking strictly from a hydrogeologic standpoint. You know, when you look at where that location is, it's a unique, geez, I hate to borrow a phrase from literature, but you know, it's a perfect storm from a geology perspective. You have some very unique geology and some highly transmissive sands and gravels, or high flow yield or water flowing sands and gravels on both sides of that watershed. I mean, Belgrade's kind of unique in that it's got some interesting geology there from a overburden standpoint.
Okay, God, I hate to even throw this out there, but do we consider a different spot for the sand and salt shed?
I can't answer that question for you, Melanie, but what I can say, I will, I'm not a strong advocate for the use of salt. It's a necessary evil, and I think many of our communities are beginning to realize it does have some consequences, some unintended consequences. So keep that in mind the next time you want to drive on bare pavement shortly after a snowstorm to get to Walmart.
Well, and gosh, I mean, I have to say, and I feel like I've been on this committee and this is the first that this sort of conversation has come up. But I was on the board when we were looking at where we're going to construct the sand and salt shed. And you're forced into an engineering. And then we had to revamp. We already had an issue with the sand and salt shed with the ventilation after it was engineered. And now I think there's this part of me that's feeling like, so we paid a lot of money to have this engineered for the best possible location in Belgrade. And if this was not the best place, then I don't know. I guess I'm feeling just super, I don't know how to say it, like frustrated and kind of angry, I guess.
I don't think it's Dwight's fault, though.
Oh, no, it's
I
not.
don't use Dwight's fault either.
No.
And I think,
Thank you, Rick.
the other thing, I think we're getting a little bit off,
Right.
our game plan tonight was to see if we want to do something with the water source. Am I correct?
I know. I gotta figure out. But the reality,
I think it's too
Dwight,
late
is-
now.
but the reality is that if we keep the sand and salt shed there, and if we have housekeeping at 100%, is strictly the location of our sand and salt shed going to be a continued source of contamination? So I guess, I mean, that's my bottom
The
line.
answer is yes.
Thank you.
He said, I mean, that's the short answer. But I agree with Ricky. I think that we really ought to consider not using salt. I mean, if you really want to be radical about it, and
Well,
why would someone continue, spend all that money to do the well work without any, remediation of the original problem?
And that was,
The fact that we're using all that salt.
Jack,
I don't think we should beat ourselves up too much over the location of the sand and salt shed. I think that housekeeping with the sand and salt shed as it is an important factor. And if he chooses, I think Anthony can explain some things that were done within the last week to address the housekeeping issue in the front of the sand and salt shed. I think our problem, I'm guessing, because I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that our problem is far greater with the legacy of the years of storage and dumping of sand on the bare ground and the open areas, both for the town and the state in that general facility, not with the contamination that's still going on, which I believe is fairly small, from the existing operations on at the sand and salt shed.
I think it's important to point out just how delicate this well is. We have David Stevens, the well that services his pit, has chlorides that are less than 10. We used that information. We did a series of borehole geophysics to better assess where the fractures were, and we moved over onto our property and were able to triangulate down to certain depths and hit those same fractures. Those fractures are fairly deep, but they're very, very low in chloride. If you look around, and you don't have to go too far, the chloride levels jump significantly in the bedrock environment. So it's I'll be very provincial here. We did a lot of cool geology to find this well. We spent a lot of money as well. I want to make sure we protect it.
Bruce?
So my, my biggest concern, which I brought up a couple of meetings ago when we was discussing this, is about putting a catch basin in, for one. For two, how stuff is handled in the wintertime at the sand and salt shed. Three, how the sand and salt's mixed. I called Anthony a few weeks ago about how the sand and salt was being mixed up there. And the salt was outside, dumped outside, and they was mixing it outside and pushing it in. That's not a good thing to be doing. I thought the purpose of a sand salt shed was everything to be mixed inside. And, you know,
Okay, Bruce, that's the first I'm hearing of it.
that's my concerns. You know, I've had these concerns for quite a while, and I still have these concerns.
I think if you look in many instances, the Maine Municipal Association would probably agree with this. There were a lot of very good protocols and policies written for the management of snow and ice control material at the municipal levels. Unfortunately, the reality of those operations often don't follow those written policies. So I think it's important, as you probably see, when you go out and I'm sure some of the challenges they may have when that salt truck shows up, it's probably a dump trailer, and they can't get the dump trailer in the salt building and dump. So they're forced to dump it outside and push it in. So I'm sure there's probably some challenges that they're dealing with like that. So they're making the best of it. But I will share, we've seen things like, and again, my apologies for being on my soapbox, but we have, bigger is not always better. We had one instances where I think they had like a 7-yard bucket on a front end loader, and they were loading our trucks with it. And our trucks are 5 to 7 yard beds. And so when you have a 7-yard loader dumping into a 5-yard bed, guess what happens? So, you know, we had a lot of spillage and a lot of overage there. So it's, again, operational things. When you start looking at things, you know, do we really need a bigger unit? Make sure things all match when you're managing salt. I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry, salt box.
Okay. I don't mind your salt box. It usually provides me with good information, and I write notes down. I guess I'm a little frustrated, actually, Bruce, just hearing what you brought to attention, because that's pretty sure that's part of the contract, is where the salt needs to go.
Well, and let me speak to that for a second, because I did speak with Dave Stevens about that, and New England Salt did come, and they did, as Dwight said, they dropped a load of salt in front of the building as opposed to calling Dave. And so Dave has called them and talked to them about it and said they must contact him before they bring a load, so that he can make sure that the shed is open, the salt is dropped inside, and so that the mixing goes on inside. And so, as Jack alluded to last week, Dave and Chris Dutil and Terry Warren and I met down there, and we talked about how we were going to ensure, and I stressed both to Chris, to Dave, and to Terry just the extreme need for us to practice as good a housekeeping there as we possibly can. And so we all talked about it and they understood and were agreeable to it. And we all came to conclusions about how we're going to address that this winter. I'm going to be more vigilant about going down there and seeing for myself during and after a storm. And Dave had some ideas for how we might address the community sand bucket there to try to help with the housekeeping with that as well. And some of that's already been instituted. Some boulders have been dropped in front of that little shed, so that people can't just pull up a pickup truck and start throwing sand mixed with salt into the bed of a pickup truck.
Dan?
We're getting way off topic, and I'm sure Dwight wants to go home and go to sleep or do whatever he's gonna do. The point of whole, this was tonight was basically bringing back the, whether we're gonna deal with a public water system. Can we get back to that? So that the housekeeping stuff's all good stuff, and we're gonna have to discuss that and do that right along, but it really doesn't need to be part of this discussion tonight.
What I can flesh out is a little bit of what Anthony provided initially. We had some hopes, a glimmer of hope that we may be able to find a shallow well up on top of the hill that sort of ran above the salt contamination. Salt is a heavy contaminant and tends to sink pretty quickly. What we did find, we went and looked at the Craig Pooler property. It was an interesting stroll down memory lane. Mr. Pooler regaled us with the history of that property regarding the estate that once existed on at that site. And we found that the well that's currently used by his existing building was the original well that for the estate, I guess, created some time ago. Which immediately, when we found that out, caused me some concern because it sounds like this estate was built, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 160 to 200 years ago or something like that? Which they didn't have a lot of drill rigs going around back then for bedrock drilling. And sure enough, we characterized and investigated the well, the existing well, and found that water was down about 91 feet. So it's very deep down to the water table on top of that hill. And the entire well was about 109 feet. So, and we suspect that that's on top of bedrock. So it looks like it was a sort of an open borehole well, or an open bottom well, sitting at about 109 feet. Strong yielding well over 25 gallons a minute. But as I said, salt in about the 600 parts per million range. So with that information, that sort of popped our balloon, our optimistic balloon about finding something shallow up there. We already knew that the bedrock in that area, and particularly down the slope, it was impacted with salt already. So we certainly have, I think we've exhausted some viable options on site, and now it's, I think, as everybody agreed or someone described earlier, frustratingly, the last option is the public water supply.
So Dwight, at this point, what are you looking for direction from the select board that the agreement that you've initiated with crafting between DOT and the town of Belgrade, where
I guess we would certainly like a commitment from the town to start working together on this. You know, I know we can work and provide a lot of the legwork up front. But there's a commitment. We want to make sure there's an interest and commitment to move this thing forward and get something done. We know
Yes.
you're going to have to take some time to perhaps go to a town meeting or the like, but you know, we can certainly work with you to that goal. I know that's usually in the spring. So let's see if we can't move that direction at the same time, perhaps parallel with some design work or some preliminary design work. It comes at kind of an unfortunate time. Usually you want to be bidding something around the winter time to get best prices. But if we can yabba dabba do and get some work done, maybe we can get something out for bid and construction next year.
Well, then I guess we have to do it, don't we?
I think unfortunately, we all have to do it. You know,
Yeah.
the department is not in a position where we look forward to building public water supplies for small communities. So it's really not our bailiwick, but it's something we've got to address. These folks have been impacted, and it's going on almost 4 years now. So we certainly like some
Yep.
resolution.
I think the hardest part, Dwight, for everyone to swallow is just that we don't have a guarantee. So if you build it, they will come, but we still don't have a guarantee that this is going to remediate the situation for the long term. And I think right from the get-go, that's where we've dug our heels in. And that's what we really wanted, was not a 2-year solution or a 5-year solution, but what were we looking at for the long term?
Well, we need to make the decision that's best for the town. And I guess that means that we're just going to have to bite the bullet, work with DOT, and, work out some sort of agreement, come up with some sort of plan and move forward.
And hope for the best is really what we're doing, is hoping for the best.
We do that every day of our lives. Just sort of hope for the
I
best.
agree. Yeah.
All right, is there anyone else who has anything to say on that, Bruce?
Right, have you guys looked into treatment systems, or is that not feasible?
Like, do you mean like an RO treatment system?
Yeah, for salt contamination.
Well, we're actually hoping, Bruce, that at some point, maybe the town office that has a giant RO system can come off that. Because what happens with that is it's two negatives that make a positive. So you take the salt from the system and you add a bunch more salt to it, and then you dump that back into the property. And it doesn't seem like that's been the best scenario for addressing the situation in that area.
Right, the reason there's a softener in the town office, because the water's hard also with the salt in it. So that's why I was wondering if it's been looked to see if a desalination systems will work in these properties or not work in these properties. I'm just trying to think of a cheaper way for maintenance and the overall expense. I know quite a bit about the water treatment, because I do that for work. So
Right.
Well, we evaluated RO units. I think you keyed in on something that's important here, is that we're dealing also with some other challenges in water quality. So when you push something through an RO unit, the water quality has to be pretty high, so that you establish what's called a treatment train. So you would have to polish the water a little bit to remove some of the metals and some other contaminants before it gets to the RO unit. So it's a pretty large unit. And when you look at some of the properties that are impacted, the houses really are not designed to accommodate a large treatment system. Many of these facilities don't have basements, so that would obligate us to build an outside storage facility that is heated to maintain the treatment system. So yes, we did look at that, and unfortunately, ultimately, when you look at the overall operational costs, it's very intensive on electrical use. Basically it's I think a 3-to-1 ratio. You're pushing 4 gallons through, and you actually waste 3 gallons to get that 1 gallon of clean water.
right.
So it's not an efficient unit. Operationally, there's a lot of challenges, and maintenance is a persistent issue. So yeah, we did evaluate that, but I think everyone agreed there would be too many challenges with that, with the houses.
Okay, thank you, Dwight.
Melanie, are we looking for telling them that we're gonna spend $2 million for this? Is that what we're looking for?
No, I think what we're looking for is DOT has said that they will build a system. The system is probably going to be around $2 million. And then turn that system over to the town of Belgrade for maintenance, usage and maintenance for the future. So essentially, if they build it, we will come. Of course, when you say DOT is going to pay for it, we're still going to pay a portion of that, because of course that's going to go to our state taxes. So Belgrade will fund a little bit extra of that, but when it's up to us to maintain.
Can we say yes to something that we don't have a figure that we're gonna know we gotta go to the town with.
So,
I think
Rick,
Devil's advocate here.
I think what we're just looking for right now is just buy-in from the select board to
Right.
say, yes, go forth and negotiate an agreement that we can consider at some point in the future and take to the town. During the course of that, we will have some more information because it'll be negotiated as far as what the town's costs are going to be. And the operational cost, at least according to the Maine Rural Water Association, are not going to be significant to us on an annual basis. What we're going to have to prepare ourselves for is the future infrastructure cost. In other words, when a pipe breaks and we have to go and replace a pipe, do that sort of repair. And so that's going to be the most significant cost of the town, is just having a capital reserve, if you will, in order to address future infrastructure needs of the system itself.
Yeah, because Dwight, what's the expected lifespan of a public water supply?
A lot longer than my duration at DOT.
Longer than my
Uh,
life too.
Melanie, I'm not sure, but I know I've seen some cast iron pipe in the greater Portland area that was put back in the late 1800s that is still being used. And now they're using ductile steel. So they've gone leaps and bounds in the improvement of the material. I'm not an operational guy, but if you think about it, you're just pushing water through a pipe. Your house, the plumbing at your house is pretty resilient and stays pretty intact. So I would draw some analogies there.
Okay.
So the memo says the DOT has offered to craft a draft agreement under which the state would build the system at an estimated cost of $2 million and the town would operate it. Now, we just have to, at this point in time, say to you, yes, fine, work on an agreement and come back to us and let us know what you've come up with. Is that?
I think that's a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
This is the first time I think, we've actually worked, this is the first formal step moving forward and working collaboratively.
Thank you.
And I might add, Kathy, that I think it would be helpful if the board considered appointing perhaps Dan and Melanie, since they've been working on this, to serve as negotiators on the town's behalf as part of this agreement, and then bring, whatever the final product is
Fine.
back to the full board.
I just, we're certainly not going to solve it tonight, but we can move forward by simply saying, yes, let's just get on it.
Thank you.
Right, but the reality, Kathy, is having Dwight here is that Dwight has been able to answer so many questions that the Saltwell Contamination Committee had. So, and the purpose for having Dwight join us after his normal working hours were that if you folks had questions for Dwight that we're not going to be able to answer, but a hydrogeologist may be able to.
And I do want to say, my apologies. Obviously, I have a biased opinion on the use of salt and the management of that. I understand it has a very good utility. If you talk to many first responders and businesses, Maine DOT and municipalities are doing a very good job. But it does come at a consequence. I grew up in Maine, and I remember driving on snowpack roads, and we had the novel concept of leaving 15 minutes early for appointments in the wintertime.
Yep.
I think many DOTs across this country and particularly in Canada, they all work very hard to ensure the traveling public can safely get from point A to point B. But occasionally, unfortunately, we have to deal with these unintended consequences. And this here is one that's, it's a legacy concern. I think working collaboratively, we can fix this and get it done. We've had 4 years behind us. I would like nothing more to be able to resolve this in the next year if possible.
All right, so is there any further discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to
Investigate.
authorize Dwight Doughty to craft an agreement with the Maine Department of Transportation that will come back to the select board for review and consideration.
Second that.
Second,
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor. Actually, we'll do this individually. Kathy, how do you vote?
yes,
Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ricky, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dan, how do you vote? All right.
Yes.
Dan, I was like, you were super quiet. All right, 5 yeses. Thank you so much, Dwight.
All right. Have a good evening, folks.
You
Thank you.
too. Run and be
Thank
free.
you.
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, next up on the agenda, we have the consideration of the following moorings committee recommendations. First up is the proposed moorings ordinance. I will take a motion to open this agenda item.
Make that motion.
Is there a second?
Yes,
All right, this item is now open for discussion. Did everyone having a chance to review the proposed ordinance?
Yep. pretty straightforward.
All right, at this point then, I'm looking for a recommendation to move the draft mooring ordinance to a moorings ordinance that will be presented to the taxpayers at their next town meeting.
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes,
Ricky, how do you vote?
Sure.
Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, 5-4. Let's move this ordinance forward to the taxpayers.
So I'd like to ask a logistical question. When is the appropriate time to have the public hearing on this proposed ordinance?
I think we need to do it closer to the town meeting. So honestly, until we have a town meeting set up, has to be somewhat, is it 45 days prior to town meeting? And I don't want to have it too early and not have enough participation, or perhaps
Okay.
not have enough people know the information closer to when we get to do town meeting.
Okay.
Fingers crossed for March, but. All right, next up, we have the proposed Lakes Committee Charter. I'll take a motion to open that agenda item.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. All right, is there any discussion on the charter for the Town of Belgrade Lakes Committee?
Can you enlighten me a little bit why we need this?
I tell you what, I'll give my perspective. There are several members of the moorings committee who are here. I think the lakes are, without question, Belgrade's greatest natural resource, both from an economic standpoint and aesthetic standpoint and a recreational standpoint. And I think it's helpful to have a group that's focused on the lakes, who are aware of issues that may be arising on the lakes, and making recommendations to the select board about any sort of action that may need to be taken in order to address whatever those issues are. And I don't think they would be doing it in a vacuum, as the memo says. You know, they would be working with other like organizations, such as the Seven Lakes Alliance and the different lake associations, working with different stakeholders that have, some interest in the lakes. Sorry.
See, keep talking like that and you're going to bed.
So anyway, I just found the work of this particular group to be extremely helpful, insightful in guiding the select board to what I think are some good solutions in regards to houseboats and moorings. And I have no doubt that there are other issues that may need to be addressed at some future point. It'd be good to have a standing committee that is at the ready to address those.
Just gonna go to the town meeting too?
Yeah.
Thank
The adoption, the creation of a new committee, is that what you mean, Ricky?
Yes,
Does that have to go to town meeting?
I don't know, that's my question.
I don't think it does. I don't, when they created the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee and the Communications Committee, they didn't go to town meeting.
Okay,
They
No,
were created by the Select Board.
that's what I was just thinking. So I don't know, sorry, Ricky, I spoke out of turn. I don't think it has to. I think it does have to come before the select board. And then we decide whether or not a standing committee is created.
Yeah, and that's why we actually propose this as a charter as opposed to an ordinance creating this group.
Right.
Well, and I legitimately feel like, if I can just chime in here for a second, that it fills a void. We are legitimately a lakefront community. I think we're at what, 53% of our tax base.
60.
60. Well, holy smokes, we've kicked it up there a notch. But 60% of our tax base comes from folks who own lakefront property. So without them and without the health and the quality of the lakes, we'll be coming back here trying to figure out how we come up with money to cover those. So I think anything that we can do, if somebody's on the lakes all the time, if there are folks that are invested in more than one way in the quality of our lakes, I think that it's fantastic. That's my soapbox.
Well, I agree with that as well, but I also remember that for the previous comprehensive plan that was adopted by the town, as well as the more recent comprehensive plan that was adopted by the town, there was a recommendation repeatedly to have a conservation committee. And it has never been created for a variety of reasons. And this, I believe, is a step in the right direction, because the conservation, the conservation of the lakes is key to the tax base. So I frankly think it's a good idea to keep an eye on what's going on in the lakes, as well as to keep an eye on the other organizations that are working in the lakes.
I agree.
See, I kind of feel just the opposite. I mean, you're talking about having the Belgrade Lakes Association, the Rathbone Association, Friends of Messalonsky. I'd rather see them form their own independent organization amongst themselves into one thing and report to all the towns that border all the lakes. It's just one more group.
See, and I guess I kind of feel like, Dan, that we have the dams committee. And perhaps the lakes committee ends up being similar to the dams committee, where you have folks from, what happens on one side of the lake affects the whole lake. So maybe this is the first step. I mean, 5 years ago or so, we tried to get members from all of our bordering communities together on one organization and for some sort of a collaborative effort. And I think Smithfield participated. That was it. And
All
maybe
the dams committee. Dams committee, we have to have them because we have to maintain the physical structure of the dams. So, but yet we're turning around and spending money out of our taxes every year to send them to the organizations to fight milfoil. And we're trusting them to do it as an organization.
Hmm.
And
When-
I guess I see this, you know,
Linda.
at some point, someone thought there was a need for an ad hoc moorings committee to address a specific issue that the lake associations didn't have the capacity to address. And so I can't imagine that there's not going to be more issues like that that are going to be raised at some point in the future. You know, I know that there's some chatter among some of the lake associations right now about the possibility of having some sort of requirement to ensure that septic systems are pumped and or inspected on a regular basis in the shoreland zone. You know, if that's the case, then that's something that's going to come to the select board at some point to decide whether or not to send a potential ordinance to the voters. And I think, you know, this group would be the perfect avenue for doing that.
Linda?
I agree with what Anthony just said. And there was and still is kind of an organization that is potentially comprised of representatives from each one of the lake associations. In 1996, Belgrade Regional Conservation Alliance was formed. I happen to be president of Messalonskee Lake Association at that time. The Conservation Corps, the group of young folks that put riprap down and install water diversions and vegetation, was born out of that group. That group did great work and had lots of energy for on the ground sorts of things, but there was not a lot of connection with the folks that create ordinances and policies at the town level. Also, that particular group has changed considerably over the last 24 years. It's now Seven Lakes Alliance, but it's, you know, it's different. Some of the lake associations have pretty much dropped out because they didn't feel like they were being heard. I think that having an organization that talks to all of the various lake associations with the idea of moving forward concepts that benefit the town as a whole.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has something they'd like to raise on this? All right, seeing none. I will entertain a motion regarding the Town of Belgrade Lakes Committee Charter.
I make a motion that we accept the charter.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes,
Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ricky, how do you vote?
I'm gonna vote no, because I agree with Dan. I think this ought to be part of a bigger thing than just Belgrade.
Okay, Dan, how do you vote?
No.
Okay, I vote yes. So 3, 4, 2 against, motion carries. All right, next up on the agenda, we have the discussion and consideration of the acceptance of a gift from the Adam Cobb Stevens American Legion Post. Take a motion to open this agenda item.
make that motion.
Is there a second? Ricky seconded.
Second.
Item is open for
Yes.
discussion. All right, so I'll just read the blurb. The Adam Cobb Stevens American Legion Post is a 501 subsection C subsection 3 organization whose only remaining members are Ernie Rice, Gary Mahler, and Dennis Keschel. Mr. Keschel reports that membership has declined to the point that it is an organization in name only. The organization would like to gift its approximately $26,000 in bank deposits to the town of Belgrade so it can be used to care for the Veterans Memorial in the village, purchasing gravesite flag holders, etc. Mr. Keschel is offered to write a warrant article that would include the appointment of 3 to 5 veterans to recommend use of the funds to the select board. Voters could consider that article at the next town meeting. The organization's founding documents and mission statement would remain with any action approved by the town. All 3 members were invited to the meeting. All right, Gary, I spy you. Do you have anything you'd like to say on this?
Well, but it would be operated much like the education fund that the town now has, and that every year the 3 to 5 vets would come up with something that they wanted to use the proceeds of that $26,000 for, and it could be flags or whatever. It would be invested with the town's money.
So that was going to be my question. So invested with the town's money, and then the education funds, what tends to be used is the interest.
Yeah, that's the way it would be used, the interest.
Okay, so invested and the interest would be used, and would there be like a cemetery committee? There would be a committee that we would then bring forward to the select board to create a committee?
No. I think the vision is you'd have 3 to 5 veterans that would come in and make the presentation every year as to what that money would be used for.
Sounds okay to me.
And so the town would be the bookkeeper.
Town would have the money invested along with the rest of the town's funds.
Okay. And then is your anticipation, Gary, that it would be much like a warrant article, that the town would say, this is the amount of interest, and that we would use this for this based on,
Handled exactly like the education funds are handled. Just seems to me it would be a fairly easy thing to handle.
Yeah, and that is exactly how we handle the education funds,
Sure.
the way that you described it,
Sure.
Melanie.
okay. Ernie, did you have something to say?
No, just scratch my head.
Sorry. So I just want to make sure, I mean, I don't want to, it seems to be like a source of frustration if I ask a question, but there's 2 different education funds, one of which puts up a sum of money and then the town matches that sum of money.
Town
And
wouldn't match any of the money.
Okay. So what we're talking about is the Don C. Stevens Fund. And then what happens with the Don C. Stevens Fund, let me just finish, is that the teachers or the folks who want to use the money then come to the town. There's a request to use this money for classroom supplies or whatever it happens to be. And it comes out on the warrant, and then the money is paid out of that account for that.
To me, that's be the way you'd handle it, yeah.
Okay. So Gary, I'm just trying to get clarification. I'm not sure why it seems like this. It seems like you're bothered by the process, and I'm just trying to make sure that for the fact of meeting minutes, that we're very clear on what the intention is.
Not bothered by anything.
Okay, because you do seem a little bit like you are. So my bad. Okay, so then it would come through like that, and then this would be addressed by the budget committee, and it would become part of the town's, so we would just move this forward like we would the creation of a new account.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about would there be a gift of the money? Because after over a certain amount, we have to ask town's approval for the receipt of a gift. And is it 15,000? Is that our threshold?
Yeah, I think that is, but I think it has to have a warrant article.
Yeah.
Lenny will write the article and submit it.
Sounds good to me.
And then put it forward
Thank
for
you, Lenny.
at the next town meeting. All right, does anyone have anything else they'd like to ask or any other discussion? Anthony?
So I think Gary already has a potential project in mind for these funds, and I think it'd be helpful if he described what that is.
Well, the little Veterans Memorial downtown in Belgrade Lakes is, in my mind, sort of an embarrassment. And Carol Johnson brought up the fact that the names on that little memorial garden only go through the Vietnam War, and everything since then, all of those vets since then don't have their name on that wall. And she would like to put those names on the wall. I think it's a bigger project than we had thought it was, because the size of the wall, the size of the plaques. But that's one thing I think that part of this money could be used for. And in fact, some of it may be used for that prior to us turning it over. You'll have a specific sum at the time we turn it over, but I'm also looking at the possibility of raising some funds to do this. But the wall does need work. The base of it is starting to chip away. It's pretty dirty. I think it gets cleaned up a few times a year and that's it. But there are other problems with it that we're going to have to discuss. And that's how the little piece of property was deeded to the town. There are specific instructions in the dedication of that property that we have to look at. My plans are to get with Carol, come back and present a package of what we'd like to do with it. Then you have to set up a group of honor roll folks that look at the names to determine whether they're qualified to go on the wall, which Carol and I discussed, and that's kind of a big project. Since 1975, which was the end of the Vietnam War or conflict, there are numerous conflicts that have been done. There's only a period of about 6 years where there were no conflicts. So I think Carol and I will continue to talk about that. I'd like to get a couple of vets involved in it to start looking at those names, and then come up with a package that we present of how we want to change that wall to include those vets that have been serving since 1975. Maybe Carol's got something to say about it, but she says no.
So I get, so Gary, so what I'm gathering now is that are you, so it's not a gift and we'd like the town to manage this fund. Is it that we would like to address these issues and then whatever is left at the end of that?
No, this is a tacked on issue that I talked to Anthony about, and he asked me to go ahead and bring it up tonight.
Okay.
Whether we use any of the money that's in that existing $26,000 or not, it would be done before it was turned over to the town. I'm not sure we do that. I'm not sure we wouldn't rely strictly on funds that we went out and gathered. But in fact, next time you drive by, take a look at that little wall, that little garden down there. It needs work.
Yes.
Well, and I have to say, Gary, that I haven't done so. So, and I feel kind of bad about that,
I
but
think Dan has got a
If-
question.
I see that, Gary. Thank you. Dan?
Just to something Gary was talking about, do you think you're gonna have to add on that, or is there enough room in that little lot to do what you have to do?
I think the lot's fine. Carol had talked about maybe increasing the size of the wall to include another tablet. What it's got, I sent Anthony a picture. I don't know if he distributed it to you guys or not,
Yes.
what that wall looks like.
Yep.
And it's
Yeah,
a brick wall.
I saw it when I was
Yeah.
down there a
Now,
month or so
I think
ago.
one way to solve that is to put a large plaque in with all the names on just one plaque and probably room for future names too. Another way would be to enlarge that wall a little bit without going outside the boundaries of that little garden.
So I just
Yeah,
shared,
Well, the reason I had asked that is if it wasn't big enough, I was just wondering if the town with a new park where the gazebo is and rebuilding a monument over in there.
Well, this was deeded to the town in 1986 and 87 by the Dion family. I think it's fine. I think the size is fine.
Okay,
I don't think it has to be
Okay.
moved. I'd just like to see it cleaner than it is and some work done on the base. You can see down at the base where it started
Yeah.
to wear and chip away.
Yep.
So, and then that needs to be taken care of. But we need to, we'll go out and find out what the cost of a new plaque would be with all the names on it. Set up an honor roll group that picks the names. So I think we're talking about a fairly good size and somewhat ranging project here, not something that's going to be done real quickly. So
Now, is it possible, Gary, to not change the plaques out for one that includes all the names, but add a plaque to the other side?
there's nothing on the other side.
There's nothing on the other side
No way to
yet.
get around the other side unless you walk through the little flowers on each side. You're talking about the back side.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, if it can be a two-sided memorial, if we can add a plaque to either end of it where the brick ends are underneath. Can we do a long horizontal one that has more names on it instead of changing out the ones that are there?
How about letting us
Okay.
come up with some ideas of how to do it?
Right.
Okay. So
So let me ask you a question, Gary. You and Ernie Rice and Denny Ketchel will devise some sort of a plan? Or
No,
are you-
I don't, let me go back. The money is a Gary Mahler, Dennis Ketchel, Ernie Rice thing, the 26,000.
Right. Okay.
This part is not necessarily. This, Carol Johnson brought it up initially. I talked to her about it, and I think we're kind of running together on this a little bit.
Okay.
And we'll have to scare up a couple of more vets to help us, I think. So I think that's where we are right now. And I looked at the town has got a fairly significant file on this little plot of land and on this wall. So, and I read through that today and it took some copies of what I needed. So I think that's where we stand right now. But to go back to one of my first statements, and it's an embarrassment. It is not well maintained. And we need to add the names from about 1981 on.
Well, I agree with you. I just know that the business group did some of the landscaping on it in, I don't know, must have been 2012 or something like that. They just did the gardening around it. But I don't think, to my knowledge, nothing else has been done to it.
There's no indication
agree with
anything
you. I
else has
think-
been done. Yeah.
Needs to be taken care of.
So I guess what I'm just trying to discern, so you would like for, I think my concern, Gary, is that if we craft a warrant article that says 26,000 and that this is the gift and this doesn't go through until whenever town meeting is for 2021. If some of these issues we would like to address ahead of time, then it wouldn't be the same amount for the gift. So do we tackle what the vision is for the Veterans Memorial prior to crafting a warrant article that sets a dollar amount on what the gift is? Or do we wait until some of this work can be completed? Or if the work that is to be completed exceeds the 26,000 roughly that is in the account?
We're not gonna do that.
So to fix this up, we wouldn't be exceeding that. So would it make sense to tackle the situation, address the situation, and then come back to the town for the acceptance of it? And, and it doesn't mean that isn't something we wouldn't add to every year or something along those lines. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to accept it and perhaps enhance it.
We're not asking for any enhancement. All we're asking for is the town to take it, invest it with their funds. And then annually, a committee will come in and say what we'd like to do with the proceeds of that money, the interest.
Right, but if you tackle some of the situations with this ahead of time, and instead of 26,000, we're looking at 9,000. Then we would craft a warrant article that says we're acceptance of this gift, blah, 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 and this is what the parameters are going to be.
I don't think we'd ever take it down that low. I think that the idea here to fix this thing would probably go out and try to raise money to do it, rather than take it out of that little $26,000 account.
Yeah. If I
Because the
may,
interest is going to be very, very low. You're not going to make a lot of money on that 26,000. So,
Well, and I'm not thinking that, I'm just thinking of, long term, if we're going to accept a gift and that this is what the intention is, then I would want to make sure that for the long term, that we're managing it the best way possible. So in order to do that, we have to craft a warrant article that's cognizant of total amount.
the
So,
town has to, yeah, the town has to, you need a warrant article asking the town to accept it as a gift.
right.
And then,
But if the thought is that some of this work might be completed before we see town meeting of next year, Gary, it could be, look at where we were July this year. So if some of the work needs to be completed prior to that, if you feel like that's important, then should we table this item, take care of what needs to be done, and then come back to it and accept what's left?
can I ask a question?
You can. Jack also has his hand up, and Bruce. But go ahead, Ernie.
Is this town property now?
it is. It belongs
Is it
to
in
the
the
town.
facilities budget?
There is no budget for it, Jack.
The facilities is part of the town and they have a budget.
Yeah,
But do they recognize this as property to take care of?
I would probably, over the years, Bobby has called the town office to ask them to go down and do things with it. The town has went down and cleaned it up. And over that period of time, so I would believe that the town does know that they own that property.
But the town has a facilities manager, and if this is town property, it should be part of their budget.
Should be. I agree, Jack.
If nothing else is to get a rake and go down there and clean it up.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Jack.
All right, Bruce.
And that is supposed to be done by the cemetery crew. And I know we go down in the spring and plant the flowers and put the flags up on it. So I don't understand why the cemetery crew is not maintaining that and taking care of that throughout the summer and throughout the year. So I'm kind of confused on that myself.
Ernie?
I kind of see this as a couple of different things. I think it's great that Gary and Ernie and Denny, want to gift this amount to the town. And, as far as crafting the warrant article, Denny, has offered to do that. So it's, right now, it's their money to use as they wish, what I hear from Gary is these are really two separate things. And that he would like to do something about this memorial, which has largely been overlooked to some degree. I'm not sure a lot of people in town even know it's there. And even perhaps the current cemetery committee or group that maintains the cemeteries, may have even overlooked it to some degree. So, we'll get them to focus on it going forward. But what I hear Gary saying is basically this is something that needs to be done. Largely, they haven't, done a fundraising effort on it yet, but that's a viable option. They'll probably get, some funds from various donors to support expanding it, changing the plaques, cleaning it up, building a better base, whatever it might need. What I hear Gary saying is prior to this group giving the town the balance of the funds in their account, if they need to use a portion of that money to for seed money or whatever it might be to complete this task, they have every right to do that. And then once that's done, then whatever funds they wish to then, give to the town, it would be the balance of that account. And, that's what I hear going on here. And so, we got plenty of time before we need to, have this be crafted into a warrant article to be presented to the town as the amount being gifted. So,
Thanks for
That's-
clarifying. That's exactly where I was going with that, Ernie.
yeah.
Was
Okay,
it for
I just
some of
want
it
to
first,
sort of get that out there so we can move
on.
on. It's a great idea. I give a lot of thanks to this trio of fellows that want to give this amount to the town, and anything I can do to help, raising money or do to, fix it up, I will.
That was my whole point, is I think it's a great idea. Are we looking at it as a matching donation? Like exactly what are we looking at here? And if we need to use some of it, and if what we really want is for the town to step up and take the reins and make sure that these things are taken care of, then let's throw it right out there. But if this is town-owned property and the town is supposed to be maintaining it, and it's fallen by the wayside, then we need to pull it back in. And sometimes we just need for somebody to point out the fact that we have not been doing so. So Anthony, if you can please figure out who should be taking care of that, if it's the cemetery committee or if it's facilities maintenance, then let's make sure that that's part of what's listed on their list of things to take care of. I'm all in favor. So are we looking at this point? What are we looking for? Are we looking for a motion to craft a warrant article that would list the amount that at the end of whatever needs to be done prior to when we have town meeting? So if it's 26,000 and it's 24,000, then we craft a warrant article and that's the amount that gets turned over to the town. And these are the parameters around which we'd like it to be used.
Sounds good.
Sounds right to me.
Okay. Is this something that we would need to do tonight, or should we revisit this, table this item, revisit it closer to when we know town meeting is going to be, or the budget process? Like, what do you folks think is the best way to handle it? Dan?
Why don't we just tell Gary and Dennis and them to go ahead and craft the warrant article they want and bring it to us so that we can put it forward. I mean, that's all we really need. They want to, Dennis wants to write a warrant article so that we accept a amount of money up to $26,000.
Mhm.
And I was just
with
going
the
to add,
stipulations.
Second tab.
Okay. Gary, oh,
I'm
sorry.
just gonna say,
Anthony? Oh.
Danny will, or Denny will craft the article and send it to you. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we can all have a lot of confidence that Denny will do a good job in writing that.
Yep.
And depending upon what the circumstances are at the time.
Yeah, my only concern was if it's less than 15,000, there's a different process. So what are we really looking at? Are we going to take a hunk out? Are we looking for a matching donation? Throw it out there, be clear with me. And
Uh-oh, we just lost her.
Gary, go ahead. It's your turn.
I think Carol and I plan on going ahead and starting to get this set up so we get those added names on that plaque. And we will also get costs on refurbishing what's there. And we're also going to start raising money for it. So whether you need to accept that or not, I don't know, but it's something that needs to be done. It's been neglected since 1975. That is, nobody's added anything to it. So I think we're going to go ahead and do it. We'll come back to you with what we intend to do or what we'd like to do. You can grant us permission at that time if you'd like, but to me, it's important. And to other vets, it's important.
Well, I think it's important to, I dare say it's important to all of us.
Absolutely. What's the wish, you guys? What do you want to do?
Well, do we have to vote on anything? I think what Gary just said,
I'm
what
fine with
they were
that.
going to go price things out and get back to us and let us know.
For that, the rest of you guys.
And I think we just let Dennis back doing the
Yes.
warrant article.
Sure.
That all right with you, Gary?
Sounds good.
Ernie,
Yeah, it's good.
you all set with that? Gary,
I'm all good with that. Yep.
go for it, I guess, Gary.
Thank you much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Well, you can thank Carol. It was her idea initially.
Well, thank Carol. We're thanking Carol.
Appreciate it.
All right. I gotta look and see what the next thing is. Oh, the consideration of
Ice rink.
ice rink proposal. Who's gonna take the lead on that?
Ms. Schubert's going to take the lead on that.
All right, let's go.
All right. So yeah, I sent Anthony the memo. We'd like to build an ice rink, and actually, I would like to change where I officially or originally said I'd like to put it. Dan was right, and the basketball court is big enough to hold the ice rink, and that will be a lot more convenient as far as setup and maintenance, and for people coming to use it. There's a light right there and everything. And yeah, it's pretty cheap to make. It's not even $300, and Chris and one of the guys could easily build it in an afternoon. And I just think it'd be a really fun thing for our community.
I'll turn this back over to Melanie. She's back. We're on the ice rink. You're muted.
Melanie's back, but she's still muted.
is it done?
There you go.
Is it better now?
Yep, you're all set.
Okay. I'm like, man. All right. So thank you for that, Lily. All right. So I think what we need, is there any further discussion on that agenda item?
No.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to allow the Center for All Seasons and the Board of Parks and Recreation to continue with their plan to build an ice rink.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
And you tell your
All
mother. that-
right, is there-
I said, tell your mother that I okayed this.
Okay. She'll be very happy.
That's a joke.
all right. I am having a problem with being able to do a shared screen with everyone now.
You want
Let
to
me see
take
if
a
I
vote?
can. Well, I'm looking to take a vote. It's showing me participants, but it is not showing me what I usually see.
Go ahead and take the vote out.
Just do a name call, you'll hear us.
Yeah. All right. Dan, how do you vote?
Yeah.
Kathy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ernie, how do you vote?
It was a yes.
Ernie?
Said yes.
Okay. Ricky, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses.
Awesome. Thank you,
Build
guys.
that rink, girl.
I will.
Thank you. Thank you for pulling that together. I like the bottom line. Just knowing how much something's going to cost us, so we know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next up on the agenda is the warrant. Anthony, do you mind leading that?
Certainly. So this is warrant 151 in the amount of $35,991.54.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Is there a second? Oh, Dan seconded. Kathy, how do you vote to open the article?
Yes.
Ricky, how do you vote?
Yep. Yes.
All right, Dan, how do you vote to open up?
Yes.
And Ernie, how do you vote to open up?
He's raising his hand.
Can anyone?
Yeah, he raised it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, 5 yes. The warrant is open for discussion.
I got a question. On the first page, have we already got the wreath?
No, we don't have them. So we ordered them. And because this is a small businessman, we wanted to go ahead and get him paid in time, because otherwise we're going to get the wreaths on the November the 27th, and we wouldn't be able to pay him until a week later. And so we were trying to get this done.
All right, does anyone else have anything on the warrant? Ricky, you may have to leave here because I can't see anyone anymore.
Yeah, I don't see anybody yet to say anything. I do have another one. And I'm just going over this. So on the first page, I believe it is again, on the CAD services,
Mm-hmm.
it's donuts.
Yes. So the initials there in front of donuts is the Household Hazardous Waste event. And so each of the participating communities brings some sort of a food item to that event for the volunteers who work it.
That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Yeah, me too.
Typically in the past, we have brought water, I'm told, but for whatever reason, we brought donuts this year.
So is everybody super thirsty because they always count on Belgrade to bring the water?
I have no idea.
They're like, man.
I'd rather have a donut than a bottle of water, but that's me.
Yes.
So if we go
Well,
down,
you know, you usually have to have it together or some coffee or something.
if we go down a little further, I'm doing this on my phone, so it's a little bit.
Okay.
I believe it's on. Can't tell you what page it's on. Oh, page,
That's right.
page 2,
Yeah.
security camera.
Yes.
Where,
So So the Secretary of State's office required that we have the ballot drop box under some sort of surveillance. And so we did that by purchasing a game camera.
Okay.
And that's being funded with the election grant as well.
I thought I knew that, but I wanted to make sure.
So, sorry, back up to the security camera.
Yes.
Is that, the camera was what, on the ballot box?
Yes.
It was focused on the drop box.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was gonna say, because we have a security system with cameras set up in the town office, correct?
No, correct. But this was outside.
Outside.
There's a
Gotcha.
game camera.
Why didn't we just install a permanent camera out there hooked to the security system?
Because we needed something quick to get done, because this came down as sort of a late breaking thing from the Secretary of State's office. And we thought that a game camera would be the quickest solution to getting that done.
Yes, I'm fine.
No,
Anybody else got anything?
you say you might want to price out actually doing the permanent one at some point, rather than dealing with that game camera.
I don't have anything, Ricky.
That can grow legs.
Ernie, you got anything?
Page 6,
We can't hear you.
He said,
Page 6.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. Dan?
Who ended up with a standing desk?
Mary, she's been having some issues for which she went to a physical therapist, and that's something that the physical therapist suggested.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know a lot of offices are using them. Are we offering them to all the people now, though?
Yeah, everybody who wants one has got one.
Okay.
Lenny, I think that's it. If you want,
That's all I got.
All right. There's no more discussion on this. Ricky, how do you vote?
yes.
Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Kathy, how do you vote?
yes.
Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, 5 yeses, the warrant carries. All right, next up on the agenda, we have the town manager report.
Yeah, so the most important thing I want to mention tonight is we just finished our budget committee meetings last week. Jack was a part of those. Bruce was there actually last week as well. I thought they were very productive. And so now we're ready to present that budget with the budget committee's input to the select board. And so I'm wondering when you might like to schedule a budget workshop. Oh, I forgot Carol Johnson, who's still with us, is also on our budget committee this year as well. Sorry, Carol.
Could we get the books at least so we could look? them
Yes,
over before
yes,
the meeting?
yes. So what I'm wanting to do tonight is, oh, bless you again.
Bless you. You need a vanity tissue.
Oh, geez, thank you.
A quadruple.
Woo.
So, yes, so.
I know,
so
3
my-
in our house, good luck.
Yeah, so my plan, Ricky, is once we set the, this date tonight, hopefully, I'm assuming it will be in early December, but we plan on sending the packets to you electronically tomorrow. And then you can pick up the books, or we can deliver the books at your leisure.
I just like to have a look at them before we go to a meeting.
Of course, absolutely. We want you to have that at least a couple of weeks in advance so you can take your time looking through it.
Yep, okay.
All right, is everyone still comfortable with trying to do like a Sunday budget meeting? Or do we want to do, in the past, we've done it a couple of different ways where we've either done a Sunday, so many hours, or we have done so many sections of the budget at the beginning of a select board meeting.
I'd rather just sit down on Sunday and just go through it.
Get it done.
Me too.
If the town
And are we
manager has a
okay?
vote, yes.
Yeah, and are we okay with a Sunday? Because I know, I mean, it's just trick, I work every Saturday, so
Sunday's good.
I'm gonna make,
Sunday's good. And then usually we try to work around folks, like if they like a church schedule. So is there like a time that's best for folks on a Sunday?
5 in the morning.
5 in the morning? Oh, okay. If we can go with like 6 or 6:30, Ricky, I might be down for that, but
Okay. You bring coffee.
Donuts.
well, apparently we'll just bring donuts and you can just be parched through the whole thing.
Okay, guys, let's pick on a date and get moving here.
Do we want to say December 6th or December 16th? December 13th.
I say do it earlier in the month, away from Christmas. People
So let's go.
may not be traveling as much, but it's too close to Christmas.
So if we go December 6th,
Good with me.
Fine.
okay,
So,
what time? 9 a.m. or 8 a.m.?
Let's go 8. Let's get it done.
Ricky, you're just mean. It's my only sleep-in thing. All right.
Well,
So eight,
if we want to work around people's church schedules, don't we do it in the afternoon?
No, we always start early. We always start at 8 in the morning, and then they figure out who doesn't go to church and they can come in first.
Okay, we get a special dispensation, right?
yeah.
I don't have to
worry,
work on
yeah,
those things.
yeah, I'll work out those sort of logistics with our directors.
right.
And so that I'm not assuming anything, we'll be having this workshop via Zoom.
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'd like to
so
try some.
we'll bring our own donuts. We'll
Yes.
bring our own donuts.
So, and I'd like to do something a little differently than what I did last year, having a year's experience under my belt is I'd like to go ahead and have warrant articles already prepared. And if, figures change, then we can change the figures in the warrant articles. That way, if everyone's in agreement on a departmental budget, for instance, we can just go ahead and approve that warrant article right then and right there. Would that be, and I'm hoping it would cut down on the number of meetings we would have to have.
Well, in all honesty, what we do, Anthony, is we do the discussion, we ask the questions. Sometimes they have to come back with additional information. But then when we approve the warrant articles, we take the entire warrant and we do them one at a time
Oh,
and go through the whole warrant.
And I
And the
understand.
only reason is that so that A, hopefully stuff doesn't get missed, and B, we see it much the way that we're gonna see it every time for the next handful of times that we see it. So everything's lined up. We maneuver stuff the way it needs to be maneuvered.
Okay, I was just trying to eliminate some meetings. Another question. Are you guys open to the possibility of having fewer warrant articles this year? And I'll tell you why. I fully anticipate, I'm hopeful that we'll have a town meeting in March. Ricky, you're shaking your head, but I anticipate that if we wait to have a traditional town meeting, it's going to be late in the year. And so I frankly anticipate that we may have to have another town meeting via referendum and do that at the traditional time in March. So if we have fewer warrant articles, we have a shorter ballot for people to deal with.
I think we should. We tried that before and then we went back and we've blown it back out again, right? We can definitely shorten that up. Shorten those articles up.
Well, and I think what happened was in the interest of transparency, we stretched everything out. And then it got super big. But what was happening previously was there was not enough delineation between, you can't encompass all of personnel under certain headers without, it's much like when I look at the school budget. What I want to know is how much of this is administrative, how much of this is teacher salary, how much of this is activities. So when we blocked it all together, what we did was we we blocked it too much. And then there wasn't enough transparency.
Well,
Can we find out?
Well, and I just want to see if you guys are open to trying some different things, and obviously you guys will have the final say, yay or nay, on how those articles are worded. But if we can, I'd like to try to condense some and then shorten others in order to just have fewer articles that might overwhelm a voter, particularly if we're doing all of that on a ballot again this coming year.
Well, I mean, some of that stuff you ought to be able to do, like capital reserve stuff. You should be able to come up with a total number of capital reserve and then write down so much for this department, so much for this department, so much for this department, just like we do on some of the other items.
Yeah, and that's what we did this past year, Dan, is we actually had a separate article just devoted to all of the capital reserves.
I mean, as long as you can group things together like that, capital reserves and this, you can shorten some stuff up. Some stuff you're not going to be able to.
Understood.
Well, and the reality is even if it's a relatively long ballot, I've not talked to anybody in Belgrade who ever said, hey, you know what? We like it if you guys give us less information and then just tell us to vote.
Yeah, but in July, we did hear some complaints about people, particularly those who showed up on election day and were standing there for 20 minutes, in a polling place, filling out I think there are 47 articles on that ballot. So
there were. I was there that day, got a little backache out of the deal, but yeah. That's part of doing your civic duty.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can consolidate and condense some of those things. Otherwise, just two other things I wanted to mention. One is I forwarded this email to you guys, but just wanted to repeat this. I checked with MMA Legal, and they did say that Maine municipalities are legally responsible for clearing sidewalks of snow and ice. Now, we're immune from any sort of liability that occurs from having snow and ice on sidewalks. There have been some ordinances in some communities requiring property owners to clear the sidewalks, but that comes with varying degrees of compliance and controversy. So
what you found out, Anthony, was what I remember from when I was on that committee, Streetscapes Committee. And basically what we did at that time was the state told us, if we build them, you have to maintain them. And we said, okay, but we're not going to maintain them unless somebody forces us to. And that's how we left.
Well, see, and Dan, that's what I was saying to Ricky was I said, I can almost remember the conversation was, if you start it, you have to continue it. So we were like, so if the sidewalks are built and we don't start maintaining them, until we do start maintaining them, we don't have to make this part of every year's budget. And it was kind of like, So I think we were sort of like, well, we'll build them, but if we don't build it into the budget every year, we won't build it in until we have to. But now Anthony's brought it up, so we probably have to.
No, I say we still don't do them.
I agree.
Don't do them. So 2 don't do them.
Figure half the businesses are closing up in the winter right now anyway.
Okay.
Tough.
Well, we have the info.
It's a tough situation that, as Dan said, half the businesses are closed. Most of the businesses are closed. Unless we have a pretty serious piece of equipment that can do this job and, the manpower to do it, I don't see how we are going to do it. So I don't know. I mean, it's something certainly we can do, but once we start doing it, as Melanie mentioned and others, we're going to have to keep doing it. And so I don't know. I think we're going to have to play it by ear again this year and see what happens. I don't, and we're probably looking at, I don't know, 10 grand to buy a piece of equipment, even used, that could do this job. And, and then Ricky brought up a good point. Even if you clear the snow and the ice, if you have, wet weather and then it freezes and it's all ice, then what about, sanding it or something? It becomes very complicated. And then once you start sanding it, then that makes spring cleanup even more complicated as well. So it's probably something I can see we're probably going to have to do something someday, but I don't think seems like it's probably not now, but we'll have to wait. and see.
Jack's got his hand up, Melanie.
Okay, Jack?
Keep
Yeah.
in mind, if there's a lot of snow and it piles up, you may have to have it trucked away. And then you have to have a place to put it. And as far as I know, we don't yet have a legal place to put it. I'm neither for or against in this conversation, but I think that's worth keeping in mind.
Okay, I don't know how it looks on you guys' side, guys, but I've now literally stopped. I have no video of anyone.
All right, nobody's got their hand up, so you're good.
I'm
We
like-
put on Videos.
Oh,
We
can
still
hear
see you.
yeah,
I think that's a good thing.
Wow. I don't know. Now, this is terrible.
I wish
I
you'd pay
think
your,
we just
I
leave
think I
it
need a
alone
new
now.
computer.
I don't know.
We should-
It may just be the internet over there, Melanie, because mine, I keep getting a message saying I'm having internet issues. So they may be having the internet issue.
So
Yeah.
as far as the sidewalks go, I mean, obviously we don't have to make a decision tonight. Maybe we should all just ruminate about it and just see if there's anything that should be done, or if we just, as some of you guys have said, just not at this time.
I'm thinking not at this time.
Not at this
I'm-
time.
Well, I honestly, Anthony, I mean, I feel like that's what I remember is like, once you start it, you have to maintain it. And if we, I remember us having this discussion with the business group, and I mean, this whole streetscape thing went on for so long that,
20 meetings.
right, that if the sidewalks are built, it's now going to become a requirement. And I remember, well, most of the businesses are closed and other communities do it this way. So I feel like if we start it and we obligate ourselves to it, then we are obligated to do it to infinity. And so I think I'm of the, let's not start it just yet.
Okay, so moving along, just a reminder that town office is, all town facilities, in fact, are going to be closed next Thursday and Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday. And then after our next meeting, I'm going to take a couple of days off as well, just to do all the final edits on my research project. And
Okay.
that's all I have.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Melanie,
Does that end your master's work?
It does.
Ta-da!
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Been
it's
a lot of work.
probably something I ought to bring up that we haven't talked about. And since Cookie Sawmill has been sold, has anybody decided what we're gonna do on the fire station in North Belgrade? That's on a piece of leased land that Tookie's leased us. And I don't know if the new people are aware of that,
Huh.
whether we should purchase it or what, but that may,
Ricky, what is that that's on leased land?
North Belgrade Fire Station.
North Belgrade. That was on a 9-year lease. And Tukey Lumber, Tukey was the owner then, and he leased it to the town for that.
Ricky, did you say it's a 99-year lease?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would assume the lease is still in effect.
Well, I'm not
Does the lease
sure it's been sold.
go with the property?
I
The
don't
lease
know.
usually goes to the proper, well, I think we better investigate it just to be on the safe side.
That's kind of what I wanted to bring up so that we could be done. I'm sure they probably don't know it either, but done in 1964, so.
I would guess that, just guessing that Hammond now owns that lease, don't they?
You wanna bet there was probably never any paperwork done on that?
Oh, 1960s, huh?
1964 is when it was built.
Do you think that there's no actual written agreement?
I'll be surprised if there is. I
Oh,
mean,
my.
then it was just a handshake. You're in Maine, not in Kansas. Kansas.
Bruce has a question.
Okay, Bruce. God, I wish I could see you guys.
You're like flying blind there, aren't you, Mel?
I am so blind.
Rick, you have to refresh my memory. Where's the well on there? Is that on the least
Out back.
part of the station, or is that out on the main part of the property?
It's out back, but it's not very far from the back of the station.
Okay. So if you do negotiation on it, you gotta make sure that well is in that negotiation to the implement.
Amen.
Might be something to just check on, so.
We'll look into it.
What else?
Anything
done.
else? Are we ready to adjourn this, Rick?
I am.
You guys just tell me what we're doing.
All right, let's adjourn.
Well,
I'll make that motion.
well, before you do that, Ricky, because we didn't talk about it tonight. We didn't talk about it tonight, but we did when we were at the salt contamination thing. Dwight was saying that they're talking about abandoning that DOT garage, and we want to try to make that part of our negotiations with them.
Yeah, that was the first we heard of that. Like the whole abandonment, like, yeah.
Yeah, because we've been trying to get that piece of property as the new fire station for years. So, if Melanie and if you guys decide that Melanie and I are going to talk to them when they start writing this thing up, that's one of the things we want to be able to talk to them about.
Yep.
Well, I think two of the important things are that and not making that triangle a priority anymore.
I think we ought to stop salting our roads too. If we're going to send a message out about the salt, we shouldn't be doing salt priority roads.
Well, but I think for the adherence, Ricky, don't we have to have a little bit of salt in there
We do, but
in order for
I'm talking
stick
about
to the road?
priority roads, like 135 is salt priority. West Road
Mhm.
priority. We need to stop that. Go back to what we were
Yep.
doing. Bruce has got his hand up too. Go ahead,
Who
Bruce.
does?
Yeah.
Okay, go, Bruce.
And the biggest thing on the salt priority, nothing against, the trial guys, but Ricky knows he has a sander. Evidently the storm that they did see it, but one storm that they did solve, they must have quite a lot of issues with the sander, because like on Wings Mills Road, there was, in areas, there was large volumes of salt. And, it was there for weeks. I mean, actually, it's still some down the road. And,
Well, and
I think we should go back to sand salt, not just straight salt.
Well, and Bruce, I'd like to say that I think maybe there was an issue with that, but as I mentioned at our meeting with Dwight, I've been behind both the trucks that do our town and the DOT trucks, and I have seen straight salt. Not a brine solution, not a solution, but salt. So we've got to have a handle on the whole thing.
Look at that brine too. That's nasty stuff.
Yeah. Sand salt, that's the way to go.
All right, I'm ready to adjourn now.
All right, I'll make my motion again.
I'll second it.
There we go.
All right, let's just blind shoot here. Dan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ricky, how do you vote?
Oh, I don't know yet. Yeah, yes.
Kathy, would you like to hang out some more? Would you like to
Whatever
adjourn?
you like.
She's already in her pajamas.
All right, Ernie, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm like, is Ernie already gone? All right, 5-0 against. Have a good night, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bye.
thank you.
You're